Millionaire comes home early, and what he sees leaves him in shock. If a house could hold the sound of the past, then the mansion perched on the cliffs of San Diego would still echo with the laughter of a woman named Emily Anderson. 3 years had passed since the tragic accident that took Emily's life, yet the house remained wrapped in silence. The once bright walls now felt like mourning veils, and every hallway carried memories that refused to fade. Inside that vast, beautiful emptiness lived Michael Anderson, a man breathing but barely living. That morning, his reflection stared back from the mirror. A man in his 40s, shirt perfectly pressed, tie adjusted for the 3rd time. Yet nothing felt right. Beneath his tired eyes hid the exhaustion of countless sleepless nights. He sighed quietly. 3 years, Emily, and I still haven't learned how to smile without you. A crash echoed from downstairs, a familiar sound that made Michael freeze. He closed his eyes and counted silently. 1, 2, 3. Here we go again, he muttered. Descending the staircase, he found the same scene replaying like a broken film, a shattered vase on the marble floor, and amid the chaos, his 6-year-old triplets, Ethan, Ava, and Noah. Once the pride of their mother, now 3 little storms under one roof. Ava was crying dramatically. Ethan stood arms crossed in defiance, and Noah hid behind a column, eyes wide with fear and confusion. Mr. Anderson, the young nanny's trembling voice broke the silence. I can't do this anymore. I'm quitting. Michael looked at her for a long moment, then simply nodded. No anger, only resignation. He'd seen this scene far too many times. The front door closed behind her, and the sound of the ocean wind filled the empty halls once more. In his upstairs office, Michael sat at the old oak desk, where he and Emily once dreamed about their future. Now it was just him, the paperwork, and 3 children he loved deeply but no longer knew how to reach. He stared out the window, the Pacific stretching endlessly toward the horizon, and wondered quietly, would anyone ever be gentle enough to bring laughter back into this house? He had built an empire of stone and glass, but couldn't rebuild the home made of love. The next morning, pale sunlight slipped through Michael's office window, landing on a note from the cleaning agency. New housekeeper assigned, Grace Ramirez. He didn't expect much. People came and went in this house like the ocean breeze, passing through, leaving nothing behind. Across town, in a small apartment with peeling walls, Grace Ramirez tied her hair into a bun, getting ready for work. Her calloused hand brushed across a framed photo of her and her daughter, both smiling softly. "Eat your breakfast, Lily," Grace said gently. "I'm starting at a new house today." "Another rich family?" Lily asked, eyes glued to her phone. "They say it's a big place, on a hill facing the ocean." Lily smirked. "Housekeeper for the rich. Sounds fancy." Her tone carried a trace of sarcasm, and Grace understood. Behind that teenage defiance was pride mixed with shame. She set her mug down and sat across from her daughter, voice calm but firm. "Sweetheart, I don't work for them, I work for us. Honest work never makes anyone small. Only arrogance does." Lily looked away, her voice softer. "I just hate when people talk about you." Grace brushed a strand of hair from the girl's forehead. "If you do what's right, you don't have to fear what's wrong. One day, you'll understand." She grabbed her worn-out coat and shoes with frayed edges. Outside, the sea wind carried the scent of salt and new beginnings. Grace whispered to herself, "One more steady job, and Lily can go to college. Just one more." The number 12 bus stopped in front of the Anderson mansion. The iron gate opened with a metallic groan, revealing a house so beautiful it almost hurt to look at. White walls glimmered under the sun, towering and majestic, yet hollow, like a castle that had forgotten its laughter. Ben, the middle-aged security guard, smiled as she approached. "You must be Grace. Welcome to the biggest and possibly loudest house in San Diego." Grace smiled politely. "Loud?" Ben chuckled. "You'll see soon enough. Around here, silence is just for decoration." Inside, the polished wood and faint scent of luxury soap overwhelmed her. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. No family photos, no warmth, only the sterile hum of a house too clean to feel alive. In the kitchen, a silver-haired woman stood over a pot of soup. Martha, the cook, turned and greeted Grace with a tired smile. "So you're Grace? Welcome to the prettiest little corner of hell." Grace laughed softly. "That doesn't sound very promising." "You should be worried," Martha said, half joking, half serious. "Not about the boss, but his kids. 3 of them. Triplets. They're unique." A loud crash thundered from upstairs, followed by a child's scream. Martha sighed, shaking her head. "There. That's them." Grace looked up toward the ceiling, curiosity and something tender flickering in her eyes. She didn't know it yet, but those very children, the so-called little devils, were about to change her life forever. And she, the quiet woman standing in the cold heart of that house, was about to give it something it had lost long ago: the warmth of human love. When Martha's dry laughter faded down the hallway, Grace remained still, her gaze drifting upward toward the ceiling where the noise had come from. Her steps moved quietly in that direction, following the fading thuds of small feet. She didn't know it yet, but she had just crossed into another world, one built from grief, silence, and 3 fragile hearts. The upstairs hallway was long and bright, yet cold as a museum. Every painting, every chandelier gleamed with lifeless perfection. At the end of the hall, the sharp voices of children broke the stillness. Shouts, cries, the chaos of a storm in miniature. Grace stopped before a half-open door. Inside, a vase had toppled, water spilling across the floor, toys scattered everywhere, and in the middle stood the triplets: Ethan, Ava, and Noah. Ava, curls tangled, was crying hysterically. "It wasn't me! Ethan did it!" "You're lying!" Ethan shouted back, defiant. "You pushed it first!" Noah, the quietest of the 3, hid behind a chair, his tiny hands pressed to his ears as if the noise could break him apart. Grace didn't interrupt. She quietly knelt down, setting her bag aside, and began wiping the floor. The children watched her in confusion. No yelling, no threats, just silence and calm. "Aren't you going to say something?" Ethan asked, suspicious. "I'm just cleaning," Grace said softly. "Everyone makes mistakes. Things can be replaced. People can't." Her voice carried a calm that made even the air still. Ava stopped crying, her lower lip trembling. "You won't tell Dad?" Grace smiled faintly. "No need. I think this room already learned its lesson today." Ethan blinked, caught off guard, while Noah inched out from behind the chair, watching her with cautious curiosity. Grace looked at their faces, beautiful, bruised by sadness, and a quiet thought whispered in her mind. "They're not bad. Just little hearts, torn and tired." When the room was tidy again, the children hadn't moved. Grace began dusting the shelves, and without realizing it, she started to hum, a lullaby, old and tender, one she used to sing to Lily at bedtime. "Sleep, my darling. The stars are bright. Mama's here through the night." The melody was soft as light on water. It floated through the room, wrapping around the children like a warm blanket. Ethan's shoulders relaxed. Ava hugged her damp teddy bear close, no longer crying. And Noah, once trembling in silence, sat down beside her, afraid to move, afraid the song might stop. When her voice faded, silence returned, peaceful, not empty. The distant crash of waves whispered through the window. Ethan shifted awkwardly and muttered, "Who were you singing to?" Grace smiled, eyes distant. To a little girl who once thought she'd never fall asleep again. "Who was she?" Ava asked softly. "My daughter," Grace answered, barely above a whisper. No one spoke after that. The late afternoon light slanted through the window, brushing over 3 small faces turned toward her. No longer angry, no longer afraid, but something gentler, something close to trust. From that moment on, between the lonely woman and the wild children, a fragile thread began to form, woven not from words, but from music, gentleness, and the pain they all silently carried. As Grace's song still lingered faintly in the upstairs air, Michael Anderson stood by his office window, looking down at the garden below. Ever since his wife's death, he had avoided the house during the day, leaving it to the staff. But today, for reasons he couldn't explain, he stayed. And for the first time in months, he heard, not shouting, but singing. A soft voice that drifted through the walls like sunlight after rain. The next morning, a new woman arrived, Mrs. Collins, the professional nanny highly recommended by the agency. Michael, worn out and desperate for order, didn't hesitate. "She has a degree in education, 20 years experience with difficult children," said the agency director over the phone. "She's the best in the city, Mr. Anderson." Michael agreed, unaware that what she brought wasn't discipline, it was fear. On her first day, Mrs. Collins imposed a rigid schedule like a drill sergeant. Breakfast at 7, math at 8. Playtime, 15 minutes. Lunch at noon, and I don't tolerate whining. Her voice was sharp as glass, her expression carved in stone. Ethan glared. Ava clutched Noah's hand. They understood instantly. This woman was nothing like Grace. That afternoon, when Ava refused to eat broccoli, Mrs. Collins calmly removed her entire plate. "If you don't eat what's served, you don't eat at all." "But I don't like the smell," Ava whimpered. "Children don't get to like or dislike. They obey." The words cut through the air like a knife. Grace, cleaning the kitchen nearby, froze. Her hands trembled around the rag, but she said nothing. By evening, the little girl sat pale and hungry at the table, eyes swollen from silent tears. The next day, it was Noah's turn. He got 2 simple math problems wrong. "Pathetic," Mrs. Collins hissed. "Even a baby could do this. You're the dumbest child I've ever met." Noah lowered his head, his small shoulders shaking. Grace stood outside the doorway, her chest tightening with every word. She wanted to scream, but fear chained her tongue. "Endure a little longer," she told herself. Maybe the woman's strict, not cruel. But on the 3rd day, all illusions shattered. Ethan accidentally dropped a pencil, knocking over a small statue. Mrs. Collins's face went pale with fury. "You disrespectful brat! You'll stay in the dark room until you learn manners!" "I'm scared of the dark," Ethan cried, but she had already locked the door. His desperate pounding echoed through the hallway. Grace stood frozen, fingers digging into her apron. Tears welled, rage and helplessness battling inside her. That night, as she cleaned the kitchen, Mrs. Collins made a phone call, her gravelly voice echoing through the empty house. "These kids are hyperactive. I'll get some children's sleep syrup, mix it in their milk. Just a small dose. They'll sleep quietly all day, and I'll finally have peace. Grace stopped cold, her heart hammering painfully. Sleep syrup for children. Her mind replayed the words, each syllable colder than the next. The fear that had ruled her for weeks shattered into something stronger. Anger. She stepped forward, voice trembling but fierce. Mrs. Collins, what did you just say about the medicine? The woman turned slowly, eyes glinting behind thick glasses. You were eavesdropping? I heard you planning something unforgivable. Stay out of this, you stupid maid. I know what I'm doing. Grace's voice broke, but her stare was steady. Not to these children. Not while I'm still here. In that instant, all her fear dissolved. What remained was a mother's instinct, protecting children who weren't hers, driven not by duty, but by love. The kitchen glowed under soft yellow light, but the air was thick with tension. Mrs. Collins was arranging bottles on the counter, mumbling to herself as she poured an amber liquid into a glass of milk. Grace stepped in quietly, her eyes fixed on the cup. Mrs. Collins's hand trembled slightly, then she pretended not to notice. What are you doing with that milk? Grace asked, her voice rough but steady. Mrs. Collins didn't look up. My job, Miss Ramirez. Stay out of it. What's in it? Mild sedative. I've used it for years. The children need sleep. I need peace. Grace took a step closer. That's not peace, that's poison. Mrs. Collins set down the spoon and turned, eyes cold and sharp. You don't understand. These children are rotten to the core. They need discipline, not pity. Grace's voice trembled but held firm. You call that discipline? Starving Ava, humiliating Noah, locking Ethan in the dark? You're teaching them fear, not respect. Their voices echoed down the hall. Upstairs, Ethan, Ava, and Noah froze. Ethan whispered, She's doing something to our milk. Ava grabbed his hand, and Noah shivered. Then, as if sharing one thought, they crept out of their room and down the stairs. In the kitchen, the argument boiled over. Remember your place, Miss Ramirez? Mrs. Collins snapped. You're just the help. You don't get to speak. No one gets to make children afraid, Grace replied, eyes blazing. Mrs. Collins sneered. Do you think you're their mother? Grace went silent for a heartbeat, then said softly, No, but at least I act like one. The floor creaked. 3 small faces appeared at the kitchen door, eyes wide and tearful. Ethan stepped forward, standing between Grace and the nanny. She didn't do anything wrong. You're the bad one, he shouted. Ava sobbed. You locked Ethan in the dark. You made me starve. Noah's voice quivered. You scare us. Mrs. Collins paled, stumbling back. Silence, you little brats. No, Ethan yelled. We're telling Dad. The door swung open. Michael Anderson stood there, his expression unreadable, his voice cutting through the room. What's going on here? Silence. Grace lowered her head, tears glinting in her lashes, while Mrs. Collins rushed to defend herself. Mr. Anderson, this woman, this maid, she's filling the children's heads with lies. Michael raised a hand. Enough. I'll check the cameras. He tapped the control panel on the wall. Footage flickered to life. Ava being denied food, Noah crying under insults, Ethan locked in the dark. Then Grace appeared, holding Noah, comforting Ava, gently tucking Ethan into bed. No one moved. The only sounds were Mrs. Collins's shaky breath and the pounding of Grace's heart. Finally, Michael turned, voice low but razor sharp. Mrs. Collins, you're fired, immediately. Mr. Anderson, please, leave, now. She packed her things in silence and disappeared through the door. The children stood trembling. Michael knelt, arms open. Ethan ran first. Ava sobbed. Noah clung to his father's leg. When Michael looked up, his gaze found Grace. For the first time, something inside him shifted. He saw trust, not in her eyes, but in his children's. And for the first time in years, he realized they believed in an adult again. That adult was Grace Ramirez. After that chaotic afternoon, the Anderson mansion fell into an unfamiliar silence. The echoes of slammed doors and harsh voices were gone. In their place came something softer, the faint laughter of children drifting from the kitchen, a sound long forgotten in this house. Michael stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching quietly. The sunset spilled through the window, painting Grace's face gold as she helped Noah fold a napkin. For a moment, they looked like a memory he once knew, something warm and impossibly gentle. The next morning, Michael invited Grace into his study. Sunlight slanted across the polished desk, cutting a line of brightness through the room. His tone was calm but earnest. "Grace, I owe you more than I can say. You didn't just protect them, you made them believe again." Grace clasped her hands together. "I only did what any mother would do." "Perhaps," he said softly, a faint smile touching his lips. "But not every mother could make them laugh like you did." He paused, then spoke with quiet resolve. "I want you to be their full-time nanny. I'll pay 10 times your current salary. You'll have full authority to care for them however you think best. They need you." Grace froze, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected that, and she hadn't expected how deeply it would move her. She thought of the small apartment waiting for her, of Lily's bright eyes every evening when she came home. "I need to talk to my daughter first," she murmured. "Of course," Michael said. "Family comes first." That evening, the kitchen light in their little apartment glowed warmly. Lily sat at the table, but her gaze turned cold when Grace explained the offer. "Full-time? In their house? You'll be there all day?" Grace reached for her hand. "I know it sounds hard, but it's a good chance. I can give you more. By leaving me here alone," Lily's voice broke, "you'll end up loving those rich kids more than me." The words pierced like a blade. "Lily, don't say that. You're everything to me." "Then don't go," she cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You keep saying I'm enough, but you always choose someone else first." The door slammed shut, leaving Grace standing in silence, heart aching. She realized her daughter's anger was only fear, fear of being forgotten, just like those 3 children at the mansion. That night, Grace didn't sleep. She sat by the window, city lights flickering in the distance. Love, she thought, wasn't something to divide. It was something to multiply. If she could heal those children's broken hearts, she could also teach her daughter that a mother's love never runs out. It only grows. The next morning, she returned to the Anderson mansion. Michael stood by the window, calm and unreadable in the early sun. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "Have you decided?" Grace nodded, her voice soft but certain. "I'll take the job, but I have a few conditions. Fixed hours, weekends off, and my daughter must be allowed to visit." Michael looked at her for a long time, then said quietly, "You don't need to ask for that, Grace. This is your home too, and Lily will always be welcome here." She lowered her eyes, a trembling smile forming on her lips. The morning light slipped through the glass, touching them both, a promise of something new. A beginning, not just for the children, but for Grace herself, who was learning to love again. From the day Grace officially started, The Anderson mansion began to change. Not suddenly, but quietly, like spring sunlight slipping through long shut windows. Breakfasts once heavy with silence now carried the soft clink of spoons, the sound of laughter, and small voices asking questions. Michael often watched from a distance, afraid that if he stepped closer, the moment might vanish. Grace never raised her voice. She didn't believe in fear. She believed in listening. When Ethan threw a tantrum for not being allowed more game time, she didn't scold. She knelt beside him, her tone calm. "What are you afraid of, Ethan?" He hesitated, eyes downcast, then whispered, "I'm scared that if I'm not good enough, Dad won't love me." Grace smiled softly. "No one loves you because you're good, sweetheart. They love you because you're you." When Ava cried after spilling paint on her dress, Grace didn't yell or demand an apology. She simply wiped the color from her cheek and pulled her into her arms. "It's okay to cry. Feeling sad doesn't make you weak." Ava sniffled, then melted into her embrace, the scent of soap and warmth wrapping around her like safety. And Noah, the quietest of them all, hid beneath tables or behind curtains whenever someone new entered. Grace never forced him out. She would sit nearby, silent, sometimes reading softly, sometimes just waiting. One afternoon, sunlight streamed through the curtain, and Noah's tiny hand reached out to hold her finger. He said nothing, but in his eyes she saw trust returning. Slowly, laughter returned to the house. Ava painted again, Ethan read, Noah tinkered with an old toy piano. They ate together without fear, and even teased each other at dinner. Michael watched in disbelief. He had tried every specialist, every therapy, but Grace had done the impossible, simply by being gentle. One evening, as Grace helped Ava fold paper cranes, Michael asked, half teasing, "How do you get them to behave so well?" Grace looked up, smiling. "I don't teach them to behave, Mr. Anderson. I teach them to feel safe. Children behave when they know they're loved." He said nothing, but in his silence bloomed something warm, a feeling he hadn't let himself name in years. Outside that mansion, Grace's own world was less kind. At school, Lily began hearing whispers. "Your mom's in love with her rich boss. She's probably the next Mrs. Anderson." Laughter followed her down the hallway, sharp as glass. Lily walked faster, cheeks burning with humiliation. That evening, Grace found her daughter sitting rigid on the couch. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Lily's eyes were red. "They said you're in love with your boss." Grace sighed softly. "Don't listen to them, honey. I'm just working." "No, you care about them more than me," Lily burst out, tears spilling. "I see it. You smile with them. You take care of those kids more than you take care of me. You've forgotten me." Grace froze. Every word cut deep. She knelt, pulled her daughter into her arms, and whispered, "Lily, love doesn't divide. It multiplies. When I love more people, my love doesn't shrink. It grows, like candlelight. It doesn't fade when you light another flame. It just makes the room brighter." Lily's sobs quieted. Finally, she nodded, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. Meanwhile, Michael's world began to stir with gossip. At business dinners, people whispered, "He's gotten too close to the help. Still can't move on from his wife." Then came Julia, his sister, sharp, polished, unyielding. "Michael," she said coldly over the phone, "you're confusing gratitude with love. Don't make yourself a joke." Michael stared out the window where laughter drifted from below. "Maybe," he said softly. "But if that joke makes my children happy, then I'll be the punchline." Julia didn't reply. And for the first time in years, Michael smiled. Downstairs, Grace was singing, her voice like a soft wind that filled the house with warmth. For the first time, the mansion breathed again, alive, calm, and quietly full of love. Since Grace entered the Andersons' lives, Julia, Michael's sister, had felt a growing unease. To her, Grace was nothing more than a lucky maid, someone daring to step beyond her place. And as all those accustomed to control do, Julia decided to destroy what she couldn't understand. One afternoon, she stopped by the mansion while Grace was tidying the living room. Her voice was sweet, but cold beneath the surface. "Thank you for helping, Michael. I just hope there's no confusion about your role." Grace smiled politely. "I'm here for the children." "Yes," Julia murmured, tilting her head with a faint smirk. "For the children." The next day, while Michael prepared for a meeting, Julia burst in, feigning panic. "Michael, something terrible's happened. Emily's diamond necklace, it's gone." He froze. That necklace was the only keepsake of his late wife. Julia pretended to search frantically, then found it tucked inside Grace's coat pocket hanging by the door. The air went still. Grace appeared just in time to see Julia holding the jewelry, her face drained of color. I don't know how that got there." Julia's tone turned icy. "Then explain why it's in your pocket." Grace's hands trembled. "I swear, on my daughter's life, I didn't take anything." Michael's eyes weren't cold, but wounded. "Grace, please tell me the truth." She met his gaze, tears falling. "If you think I did this, I'll leave." Before she could move, small footsteps thundered across the hall. Ethan, Ava, and Noah ran in, clinging to her. "She didn't do it!" Ethan shouted. "Don't let her go like Mom," Ava sobbed. Noah whispered, "Miss Grace isn't bad. She's not bad." Michael looked at his children, heart twisting. He turned away, suspicion flickering, not toward Grace, but toward Julia. That night, Julia's voice carried from the hallway as she spoke on the phone, amused. "So easy. A little drama and Michael will come to his senses. She'll be gone before he falls for her." But Michael stood just beyond the doorway. He heard every word. When she turned, his face was colder than she'd ever seen. "Why, Julia?" she faltered. "I was protecting you. She's made you vulnerable, and I didn't know how to accept that after Emily." "No," Michael said quietly. "She's done what my sister never could. She saved me, and my children." Julia broke down in tears. Michael walked away. The next morning, he found Grace in the kitchen, folding laundry, eyes swollen. "Grace," he said softly, "I was wrong. I should have trusted you." She looked at him for a long time before answering. "Trust is like glass. You can mend it, but the cracks remain. I forgive you, but I'll need time to believe again." Michael nodded, wordless, and as morning light filled the room, the silence between them wasn't distance anymore, just the fragile beginning of something rebuilt from truth and faith. After the ordeal, Julia disappeared from the Anderson mansion for a long time. When she returned, she looked thinner, quieter, a shadow softened by remorse. She found Grace one afternoon, kneeling in the garden, her hands covered in soil and sunlight. Julia hesitated, then spoke, her voice raw. "I've been in therapy," she said, fingers twisting, "and I realized I was wrong, not just to you, but to my brother." Grace looked up, smiling gently. "Forgiveness isn't hard, Julia. What's hard is believing people can change. But I believe you can." Julia lowered her head, tears falling. "Thank you, Grace. You have something I never did, a kindness that heals." A few days later, Grace brought Lily to the mansion for the first time. It was awkward at first. 4 children, 4 different worlds. Lily stood near the doorway, uncertain, while Ethan, Ava, and Noah watched her carefully. Ava spoke first, shyly. "You're Miss Grace's daughter, right?" Lily nodded. "Yeah. And you guys are—" Ethan grinned. "Her kids, but not the old kind." "The old kind?" Lily frowned. Noah whispered softly. "She's our mom, but we don't want to take her away from you." The words struck Lily like sunlight breaking through clouds. She knelt down, took Ava's small hand. "You're not taking her," she said, smiling for real this time. "We can share her." Laughter burst out. Light, easy, sincere. From that day on, a quiet bond bloomed between them, fragile yet warm, like wildflowers after rain. Meanwhile, Michael and Grace grew closer, not through confession, but through the ordinary grace of shared laughter and calm dinners. Yet something unspoken lingered between them. One night, after the children had gone to bed, they stood on the porch beneath the silver moonlight. "Grace," Michael said softly, "you didn't just heal my children. You saved me." She looked at him, her heart trembling between fear and tenderness. "Michael, I'm not sure I'm strong enough to face what people will say. The difference between us." He smiled faintly. "There's no difference between 2 people walking toward each other." The next morning, Lily took her mother's hand. "Mom," she whispered, "he makes you smile again. If he does that, then I'm happy too." Grace hugged her tightly, tears shimmering in her eyes. Her fear began to melt into something gentler, acceptance. Weeks later, in the lavender garden where spring had just returned, Michael held a simple ring. His eyes didn't waver. "Grace Ramirez, you brought life back into this home. Would you take the rest of mine with you?" She laughed through her tears, nodding. "Only if you promise to keep love this gentle." He took her hand, and as the wind carried the scent of flowers, the Anderson mansion, once cold and broken, filled again with laughter, warmth, and hearts finally healed. That spring, the Andersons' backyard bloomed in soft light. Lavender swayed in the breeze, candles flickered along the path, and flowers glowed like gentle stars. It wasn't a grand affair. No guests of status, no extravagance. Just a small ceremony where those who had once known pain chose happiness together. Julia planned every detail herself, quiet redemption shining through her care. Lily, in a pale blue dress, served as bridesmaid, her smile delicate as dawn. Ethan proudly carried the rings, Ava scattered white petals, and Noah held a wooden sign that read in uneven letters, "Welcome home, Mom Grace." Their laughter mingled with Julia's soft piano music, filling the garden with warmth. When Grace appeared, wearing a simple white dress, the world seemed to pause. Michael stood waiting beneath the arbor, his eyes free from the weight of the past. Only gratitude remained. They looked at each other, and for a moment, nothing else existed. Only 2 souls who had walked through darkness to find the light again. "We weren't born a family," Michael said, his voice trembling, "but we chose to become one." Grace smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "And that choice means we'll belong to each other, always." Applause broke through, laughter and tears melting into one. Lily hugged Ava. Ethan squeezed Michael's hand. Noah rested his head on Grace's shoulder. Julia stood still, smiling through her own tears. Finally, her family was whole again.